All right.
Shalom, shalom.
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 Shalom lakam, which is peace unto you all. Nach nawahai bar shalom. Hey, with the Hebrew Israelites coming to you week in and week out through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, to preach to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, and Israelite foreigners. Chamatam kaya, kamalakal hashemayim kwara, repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. First and foremost, before we get started, we're going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham Wacha. That's why double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, out there pushing this truth with all righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
So just as we've been going into most recently, the 12 tribes. All right, and today we're touching on the tribe of Ephraim, in which we could start with Genesis, the 49th chapter. And as we always start, we'll get the first verse, and it says, Genesis 49:1. It says, and Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. And so pretty much, just touching on that, going into Genesis 49 and then also, Deuteronomy the 33rd chapter, essentially it gives the characteristics and the traits, what we could see in the spirit of what each tribe will be exemplifying, present day in these last days.
God, you want me to go down to verse 22, or you want to get Genesis 41:52?
Yeah, we can get that. We get Genesis 41 and 52.
God. This is Genesis 41. I'll start at 51.
Mm-hmm.
It says in Joseph. Salakia?
You put it on the screen, it still say Genesis 49.
Oh, Salakia. There we go. Genesis 41 and 51, it says, and Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for the Most High, said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. In the name of the second called he Ephraim, for the Most High hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Right. So it says, verse 51, it says, and Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, or Manasseh in the Hebrew, in which Manasseh goes into the so-called Cubans. All right, but Joseph essentially, is the forefather of, pretty much the Northern Kingdom, or pretty much Manasseh and Ephraim. All right, they comprise of pretty much the tribe of Joseph, But it says
the house of Joseph.
House of Joseph, Salakia. But it says, Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, which is the so-called Cubans. It says, for the Most High said, he hath made me forget all my toil in my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for the Most High hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction, in which, Ephraim goes into I am fruitful. Baba Kushak, could you click into it, the Ephraim?
Mm-hmm.
So as it reads, it says aparayam, in which the root word is apar. Par by itself, like parya, or is also related, to this word. But par by itself goes into a fruit. All right, when you put the I on the beginning of the word, I is strength, and then also it goes into the number one, So I can also represent I, being that one is the first person, So it's I am fruitful. Aparayam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it says double ash heap, I shall be doubly fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So from there, could we get if bros didn't have none, could we get Genesis 49 and 22?
Mm-hmm. This is Genesis 49 and verse 22. It says, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall.
Mm-hmm. Could you touch on the part you was talking about with the branches?
Oh, yeah. So pretty much branches, when you go into this word for branches, real quick. The word here for branches is, Salakia. Let me go back. is Bath, which pretty much means daughter, right? So in the ancient world, and really, and even in modern day, whenever you join houses, what do? There's a process of, you giving your daughter to another family, marrying to another, to another man of another family, and that's how you join houses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what it says right here, Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well whose branches run over the wall. Pretty much what it's stating here is how Joseph, would end up making these alliances and these pacts and these um uh, what do you call it, covenants with the heathen, and that's very evident whenever you look at Ephraim, how they have U.S. citizenship. Pretty much, if you're born in the island of Puerto Rico, you automatically have citizenship. When you look at all the other, um, so-called Latin tribes, right? They don't have that. They don't have that. I guess you could say benefit of being able to travel freely, to the United States without a passport. Unlike Ephraim.
Right.
So that allowed pretty much for them to benefit off of that citizenship, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And I got more history too to add into that, but I don't know if you want me to go into that right now.
Oh, you got it.
Con. So pretty much adding to that, I got this right here. It's a little bit of history. This is the Jones-Shafroth Act, right? So it says the Jones-Shafroth Act, officially called the Organic Act of Puerto Rico or the Puerto Rico Federal Relations Act of 1917, is an organic act of the 64th United States Congress that was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson on March 2nd, 1917. The act expanded the civil administration of the insular government of Puerto Rico, which was established under the federal jurisdiction of the United States as a local governance of an unincorporated territory through the Forker Act of 1900. It served as a primary organic law for the government of Puerto Rico and its relations with the United States until it was superseded by the Constitution of Puerto Rico in 1952. I'm trying to get to the point. Let me actually go down. I think I've seen it down here because it goes into how this law pretty much allowed or gave access to Puerto Ricans to come up to the United States. Okay, right here, citizenship. So it says the Jones-Shafroth Act granted statutory birthright U.S. citizenship to anyone born in the archipelago and island on or after April 11th, 1899. The law was reinforced by and remains in effect under the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952. So this allowed for, like I said, for Puerto Ricans to be able to have citizenship to freely travel into the United States, right?
Yeah.
This happened in 1917, right? So when you look into this, because I did a little bit of research into this, the United States had this happen at this particular time because World War One was about to take place, where the United States was about to enter into World War One, right? So this allowed for a lot of Puerto Ricans, and when you look into it, Ephraim was very eager into joining this war in World War One in order for them to, I guess, claim benefits in the United States. So this further adds into that them, making pacts and alliances with the heathen. Because I believe it was like something like 230,000 Ephraimites signed up for the selective services, and I believe like around 20,000 got drafted into the war, right? So World War One, you had Ephraimite in there, man, or Ephraimites in there.
I got a scripture.
Mm-hmm.
pretty much going into the the annexation of Puerto Rico. This is Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 33. Because it's pretty much this was the Lord fulfilling this prophecy, in which Ephraim is actually in the what they would call the I think the word is contingent, pretty much meaning all together in the states, pretty much, but like being that Puerto Rico is an annexed part of the United States, it still falls under this. But this is Jeremiah 50 and 33. It says, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. All that took them all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go." So, pretty much we're all in captivity in America, Babylon the Great. And that's pretty much an exemplification as to, that specific scripture.
And I also got this, just to add to that, this is this part of the Wikipedia page. It says impetus, and that word impetus just means like the motivation or the I guess, yeah, pretty much the motivation behind this Jones-Saffroth Act. So it says the impetus for the Jones-Saffroth Act came from a complex of local and federal interests, including the Selective Service Act of 1917. Right. So this has happened the same year. Right. So it says which goal was to increase the force of the National Army of the United States for service in World War I through conscription. At the time of the act, Puerto Ricans lacked internationally recognized citizenship, but pro-independence officials in Puerto Rico were wary of imposing citizenship. Luis Munoz Rivera, this Jake, but pretty much so pretty much what was going on is that Jake was trying to, this is like before civil rights, and they were trying to get some civil rights in that land, in Puerto Rico, right? But they were trying to make a deal with the United States of how citizenship would look like, because they didn't want to be second-class citizens, right? So they were making deals and they were going back and forth. And this guy was like a politician. It won't show up. Hold on. So it says Luis Munoz Rivera was a Puerto Rican poet, journalist, and politician. He was a major figure in the struggle for political autonomy of Puerto Rico in union with Spain. Right, but that was before, like we mentioned, they got annexed by the United States. But it says a resident commissioner in Washington argued against U.S. citizenship, giving several speeches in the House of Representatives on 5th May 1916. He expressed the following: "Give us now the field of experiment which we ask of you. It is easy for us to set up a stable Republican government with all possible guarantees for all possible interests. And afterwards, when you give us our independence, you will stand before humanity as a great creator of new nationalities and a great liberator of oppressed people." Right. So Jake was over here trying to pretty much tell Esau that, if you give us independence, you'll be regarded as, a great liberator of oppressed people. But what Jake failed to realize is that you're talking to the same devil that put you in slavery. The Spaniards, they're the same people. Spaniards, the British, right? The Portuguese, these are all the same people. These are all Edomites. But it says, "As you know, the final aspiration of my party is nationalism with or without American protectorate. And as the Puerto Rican people understand it, the granting of U.S. citizenship will interfere with their aspirations for independence," which is exactly what happened. As soon as they gave them where they signed this thing, right, the Jones-Saffroth Act. As soon as they signed it, what did Jake do? Jake lined up to get got the citizenship and then lined up for war, man. So their aspirations for independence, that went out the window. Right. So they were pretty much tied in with that alliance with America. Right. And then this leads into this right here. Let me pull it up. Into this. Why Puerto Rican migration to the U.S. boomed after 1945. right? Because after World War II, you have what they call the Great Puerto Rican Migration, right? Where you had Ephraimites pretty much traveling up to New York and all these northern states, and pretty much seeking new jobs. And this article goes into it, right? This article goes into a little bit. I'm gonna read just a couple paragraphs, but it says in the 2 decades after World War II, hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans boarded planes for America in what has come to be known as the island's Great Migration, right? Because going back to what we read in Genesis 49 and what was it?
22.
22, it says Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well whose branches run over the wall, right? Because when you look at all the other Latin tribes or Native American tribes, they were already in that land, in that region, right? But Ephraim was the one that actually was able to spread out into various places. When you look at the United States, really Ephraim is everywhere.
Yep.
But you can find, pockets of Ephraim, in Chicago, New York, a lot of these major cities.
Yeah, mainly up north.
Yeah, mainly up north, and that's pretty much what solidifies this verse in Genesis 49:22. Because Ephraim was pretty much the main one, and really one of the first ones to really, migrate in masses over here to the United States. But let me see. So it says hundreds of thousands of Puerto Ricans boarded planes for America in what has come to be known as the island's Great Migration. Many farm workers hastily flown north to help with harvests on the mainland were transported in repurposed military cargo planes fitted with wooden benches or lawn chairs bolted to the floor. The vast majority of the island's immigrants bought tickets for the 6-hour commercial flight to New York City, persuaded with good jobs and a better life awaited for them and their families. So, like I said, I did a little bit of research on this. Pretty much what happened was the island of Puerto Rico was pretty much being, I guess, in other words, invaded by these American companies, these sugar companies, to the point where they bought off a lot of the land, and they were only growing sugarcane, right? And sugarcane, it has like a 4 month off season where Jake will call that tiempo muerto, which just meant dead time, right? Where pretty much where you weren't making no money, and it led the Puerto Rican country into like an extreme poverty, to where Jake was pretty much after the introduction of airplanes and stuff, Jake just started taking those trips over to the United States, heading over to the mainland.
I praise it, but I can.
Mm-hmm.
This is bros know what a precept is, going to never trust down an enemy.
Sirach 12 said.
Mm-hmm.
So Bon Sirach chapter 12 and verse 10, it says, never trust down an enemy. All right, in which us as Israelites, we have natural enemies, starting with Esau eating the so-called white man. So it says never trust down an enemy, for like as iron rusted, so is his wickedness. I'm gonna keep going. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed of him and beware, because Esau humbled himself as if he's trying to be diplomatic. I mean, he did it during the time of Cristobal Colon. He did it during the time, with Gad. He did it during the time of, Reuben and the Seminole Wars. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed of him and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hadst wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust had not been altogether wiped away. Other scriptures, that come to mind, Psalms, the 55th chapter, going into how the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but what was in his heart, because being that, he's seeing that, all right, well, they want this, that, and the third, they want jobs, they want to come over to America. Esau pretty much capitalized on that and, move those, you said it was sugar cane, right?
Yep. That they pretty much removed all the food source that the farmers had, because they bought off all the land, and so all that was left was pretty much sugarcane from the companies.
Yep.
Right. And pretty much Esau made it to where, Jake wanted to be a part of America, and Esau ultimately, capitalized on that and made it to where, he pretty much took advantage of Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If I can add to that, because like you was mentioning, Puerto Rico was supposed to be like an extended part of America, pretty much, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So they drained the shit out the resources over there, so they pretty much are left for, pretty much left for dead because you had it was like a couple years ago they had that earthquake and they was over there without power or whatnot, and then
Mm-hmm.
to show you how much the devil cares about him. Trump went over there and was shooting paper towels at him like he was shooting free throws, man, showing you that these devils don't care about you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to read this real quick. This is you still on Sirach 12. Matter of fact, go down to keep reading. Read down to the end of the chapter.
Montserrat 12:12, set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith.
All right, because here it is. You got a lot of these Ephraimites that think they're so called white. So they feel like they're promised more than the average Jake out here just because of their skin complexion, but not realizing that Esau has always stolen from you. The fact that they even call you Puerto Rican, the word Puerto Rican just means rich port. So they drained your country of all the resources and left you with nothing. You know, that's why
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, Jake is stupid for still wanting to make alliances with Esau. But when you go into history, that's always been the Northern Kingdom's problem. Because I want to go into the history real quick. Um, so when you go into after the kingdom split, um, a reoccurring theme kept happening. Not every king, but a few of the kings that made alliances with the heathen nations. So I typed in, did all Northern Kingdom kings make alliances with heathen nations? So it says no, not all of them, but foreign alliances were a massive repeating theme that heavily contributed to the Northern Kingdom's downfall. While every king was guilty of idolatry, several kings focused entirely on internal wars, military coups, or isolationism rather than international diplomacy. When the Northern Kingdoms did make, when the Northern Kings did make alliances with pagan nations, it usually took one of three forms, and it mentions marriage alliances, which you were speaking of earlier, dealing with the branches.
Mm-hmm.
So it gave an example. Said the most famous example is King Ahab, who formed a commercial and political alliance with the Phoenicians. He sealed this threat. He sealed this treaty by marrying Jezebel, the daughter of the king of Tyre, which is a Hamite. This specific alliance directly led to Baal worship becoming Israel's state religion and the state sanctioned murder of Yahweh's prophets. So, just giving that example of why you're not supposed to join yourself with the heathen, because Jeremiah 10 and 2 tells us to learn not the way of the heathen. So that's why when we go into I forget what chapter it is in Deuteronomy, where the script it tells you that we're not supposed to marry those five Hamitic tribes, because we can still deal with heathen, but you weren't supposed to deal with those specific Hamitic tribes or whatever. So Israel, dealing with the Northern Kingdom, they pretty much would do these marriage alliances, or they'll actually do military coalitions with the different kings as they were facing different turmoils within themselves or with another nation. Instead of trusting on the Lord, they would trust on the devil, just like in today's time, because we know during that time of that earthquake, you know them damn Puerto Ricans, man, they was calling on Jesus and looking at the white man to be their savior instead of Yahweh Shem Shai, which is why the Lord did what he did to that island.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go back to that. Matter of fact, I'll read some more of this too. Military coalitions, kings frequently align with neighboring pagan kingdoms to fight against rivals. says King Baasha allied with Ben Hadad the first of Syria, Aram, to attack the southern kingdom of Judah. King Ahab later made a treaty with Syria after defeating them in battle, restoring trade routes instead of destroying them, as the Most High commanded. King Pekah formed a major military alliance with Rezin, king of Syria, in an attempt to invade Jerusalem and force Judah into a coalition against the rising threat of Assyria. And then it says, paying tribute to foreign empires as the Neo-Assyrian Empire expanded. Later, Northern Kingdom kings engaged in forced alliances by paying heavy bribes or tribute to buy protection. King um, Menahem gave 1,000 talents of silver to King Pul Tiglath Pileser III of Assyria, so that Pul would support his grip on the throne. And then King Hoshea was originally an Assyrian vassal. However, he secretly tried to switch alliances by plotting to double cross with Egypt. He stopped paying tribute to Assyria, which provoked the Assyrian king to invade, leading directly to the final destruction of the northern kingdom. Now, these are just going into the examples of, you know, northern kingdom, but specifically dealing with, we're talking about Ephraim, you know, making those pacts with the devil, man. We saw that never worked out, and so today it's the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
went to Esau, all right, for help, not realizing that Esau still doesn't have your best interests at heart. That's why they said, you know, the northern kingdom as well as the southern kingdom, they always want us to get juiced together and all that, showing you, like you read earlier, we're oppressed together.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to that, Ciroc.
God.
I got one for you, if I may.
Y'all got it.
This is Hosea 7 and verse 8. It says, Ephraim, he had mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned.
Mm-hmm.
Just adding to your point, Ephraim was always, mingling himself with the heathen. He was always, like you mentioned, tapping into the idols, tapping into their customs. But it was all to their detriment, right? As it says in verse 9, strangers have devoured his strength, and he knoweth it. And he knoweth it not. Yea, great hairs are here and there upon him, yet he knoweth not. So, by taking on the ways of these heathen, their idols, the culture, all that has pretty much left Ephraim in a pretty much like a decrepit state, to where you're constantly being uh, 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 bombarded with these curses, man.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when you read in Deuteronomy 28, the Lord went into, all the curses that would befall you if you were to go against his laws, right? And Ephraim went, all the way left with it, man.
Yep.
And this is why you see Jake in this, condition that they're in, dyeing their hair blonde, trying to be, white, oppressing their brothers, right? Because I believe Ephraim, what they would do, they would look down upon the other tribes. They would look down upon, Issachar, and all the other tribes coming up from down south.
Yep.
They'll pretty much brag about, having the U.S. citizenship and, being an American and pretty much having these benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I got precept if I can.
And if I can add real quick, because the verse about them being a cake unturned, the majority of that pride comes through a lot of them being, that lighter shade. But it's Ephraimites that's light and dark skin, because like I said,
Right.
a cake and turn is like when you cooking a pancake, if you don't flip, the pancake, that one side that's on the griddle or a stove, it's going to be burned longer, so it's going to be darker versus the other side. And like I said, it's all shades of the Ephraim throughout the country and the world. So a lot of them have that pride because they look like Esau. They're very light skinned or whatnot, but that still doesn't negate the fact that you're still in the same category as the Southern Kingdom, so-called black men. So that's where the Lord is really breaking a lot of that pride, because as we always say, man, hey, they getting they nigga wake up call, man. All right, and a lot of that is shown through the aid that Esau is supposedly giving you, which is not aid, man. It's just showing you they don't give a fuck about you.
Mm-hmm.
Which I
Okay. This is Romans chapter 8 and verse 16. And it says, "For the Spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High." So the Spirit is talking about, the scriptures, all right? John 6 and 63, Isaiah 34 and 16. Essentially, again, the Spirit going to the Word, but essentially it's a living testament as to, what will be happening to us as a people. So, we seen that pretty much, Ephraim was used for resources, all right? That's the same thing as the scripture that you pretty much just got, Yeshaya.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, again, the scriptures is a living testament as to who we are as a people, and the children of the Lord is ultimately, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indians, Haitians, and it's like foreigners.
Yeah, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
reason why you are under the curses that you're under. I'll grab this real quick. This is Hosea 4 and 17. It says, Ephraim is joined to idols, let him alone. All right. And like we were going into, man, a lot of these so-called Puerto Ricans are enamored with, the idols, man. Let's say the Yeshua, you can speak on it a little bit more that I know you
Mm-hmm.
got knowledge on that, but that's that Northern Kingdom altogether. But we know Ephraim being the head of the Northern Kingdom, man. Hey, you better not tell them that Jesus Christos is goddamn black, man. Hey, they'll flip on you, man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now Jake is liable to jump your ass, if you come around them, especially around family members and shit. Man, they'll disown you.
Mm-hmm.
Like they treat Mary, and all and their doctrine as uh pretty much they take it very serious. Is my point. And even like you mentioned, the idols. Jake is very heavily into idol worship, man. With the saints. When you go into these Hispanic stores, you see them candles with different saints on it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see rosaries. You'll see all kinds of different things. That's really tied to paganism.
Mm-hmm. And I got this. We're going into the history with that because
Hmm.
when you go into the Northern Kingdom after the split, all the Northern Kingdom kings went off. All right, they all were heavily, influenced by idols. So it says, according to the biblical account, every single one of the 19 kings of the Northern Kingdom of Israel, from the split of the kingdom until its fall to Assyria, turned away from the Lord and led the people into idol worship. The reoccurring idolatry was largely driven by a combination of politics and the adoption of foreign deities. And then goes into examples. You have the sins of Jeroboam, the very first king of the northern kingdom. Jeroboam the first set up golden calves in Bethel and Dan. He did this for political reasons. He was afraid that if the people traveled to Jerusalem in the southern kingdom to worship, they would want to reunite with the south. Every subsequent king continued to walk in the sins of Jeroboam. And then it says Baal and Ashereth under King Ahab and his wife Jezebel, the worship of the Canaanite storm god Baal became the official state religion, plunging the nation deeper into pagan practices. And then it says political alliances. Later kings frequently made political alliances with surrounding empires, adopting their gods like Molech and Ashereth and building shrines and altars to them throughout the land. Because the kings and nations generally rejected the Lord and ignored the warnings of the prophets, the northern kingdom was ultimately conquered and destroyed by the Assyrians in 1722 BC, as recorded in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter.
Hmm.
Y'all got it.
Yeah. Oh, Slaki, go ahead, bro.
Oh, y'all got it.
No, I was just gonna add to that because you know, it didn't change. What I'm saying? Whenever Jake came over here to the Americas, what they say, they said that in Second Ezra 13 that, let us go to another country pretty much to keep, the laws of the Lord, pretty much what we couldn't keep in the land of Israel. Right, roughly
Mhm.
paraphrasing. That's pretty much what they did. They came over here to the Americas so they can keep the law, statutes, and commandments. But as we know, Jacob is a perpetual backslider. That they eventually ended up backsliding back into that idol worship, man. That's the reason why. When you look at the history, which we got, uh, uh, I got it right here. Let me get this real quick.
Before you get that, could you go back to Genesis?
Oh yeah, come. Genesis 49.
Mm-hmm. Cause it'll tie into the history.
Genesis 49 and read verse 23.
Uh-huh.
Genesis 49:23, it says the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him.
Right, in which the archers is going into the Spanish conquistadors.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much during that time, that was the so-called Tainos, in which, and just in the name Taino, it shows that it was essentially Jake, because Taino is broken Hebrew for good people. The Ta goes into Tawab, the Ain, all right, the I-N goes into Aim in Hebrew, which is people.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna get this. This is from the TainoMuseum.org, and it says Taino, good people, like you mentioned, Tawab Aim.
Mm-hmm.
It says were seafaring indigenous peoples of the Bahamas, Greater Antilles, and the Northern Lesser Antilles. They were one of the Arawak peoples of South America, and the Taino language was a member of the Arawakan language family of Northern South America. It says at the time of Columbus's arrival in 1492, there were 5 Taino chiefdoms and territories on Hispaniola, modern-day Dominican Republic, and Haiti, each led by a principal cacique, chieftain, to whom tribute was paid. Ayiti, land of high mountains, which is talking about Haiti, was the indigenous Taino name of the entire island of Hispaniola, which has kept its name as it is used as a Haitian Creole form for Haiti. It says Cuba, the largest island on the Antilles, this is where Manassas is located, was originally divided into 29 chiefdoms. Most of the native settlements later became the site of Spanish colonial cities, retaining the original Taino names. For instance, Havana, Batabano, Camagüey, Baracoa, Bayamo. The name Cuba comes from the Taino language. However, the exact meaning of the name is unclear, but it may be translated either as where fertile land is abundant, Cubao, or great place, Coabana. Puerto Rico also was divided into chiefdoms as the hereditary head chief of Taino tribes. The cacique was paid significant tribute. At the time of the Spanish conquest, the largest Taino population centers may have contained over 3,000 people each. Let me see. Let me skip down. As a matter of fact, let me just continue reading. It says the Taino were historically enemies of neighboring Carib tribes, another group with origins in South America who lived principally in the Lesser Antilles. The relationship between the two groups has been a subject of much study. For much of the 15th century, the Taino tribe was being driven to the northeast in the Caribbean, out of what is now South America because of raids by the Carib. Women were taken as captives, resulting in many Carib women speaking Taino. It says the Spanish who first arrived in the Bahamas, Cuba, and Hispaniola in 1492 and later in Puerto Rico did not bring women in their first expeditions. They took Taino women for their common law wives, resulting in mestizo children, right? So you have the wheat and the tares.
Mm-hmm.
It says sexual violence in Haiti with the Taino women by the Spanish was also common. It says scholars suggest there was substantial mestizaje, racial and cultural mixing in Cuba as well, and several Indian pueblos, which are villages that survived in the 19th century. So, Esau pretty much, raped, robbed, and murdered his way, you know, uh, throughout the Bahamas and all the Caribbeans. But it says the Taino became extinct as a culture following settlement by Spanish colonists, primarily due to infectious diseases to which they had no immunity. The first recorded smallpox outbreak in Hispaniola occurred in December 1518 or January 1519. The 1518 smallpox epidemic killed 90% of the natives who had not already perished. Right, this is all part of the curses.
Judgment.
Yeah, judgment. It says warfare and harsh enslavement by the colonists had also caused many deaths. By 1548, the native population had declined to fewer than 500.
There's a little bit more in the Genesis 49 to go with that.
Genesis 49.
Yeah, 24 says. It says, verse 23, it says, the archers have sorely grieved him and shot at him and hated him, going to the Spanish conquistadors, the colonists. It says, but his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty power of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. You know, so when you look at that time period, it said it was fewer than 500. Pretty much the Lord, you know, the Spanish conquistadors came over there, you know, because Jake was going off and things of that nature. But the Lord essentially had it to where, you know, Jake was preserved, you know, through isolation, resistance, and intermarrying, like we was going into previously in the lesson, and then also strategic, you know, hiding of you know, traditions.
And just to add to that, let me go back. Where was it? I wanted to get this real quick. Going into their religion, you know, whenever the conquistadors came, you know, this is what they were practicing. It says the Arawak Taino were polytheists. So pretty much they had multiple gods. And it says, and their gods were called Zemi. The Zemi controlled various functions of the universe, very much like Greek gods did, or like later Haitian voodoo, Iwa or Lawa. However, they do not seem to have had particular personalities like the Greek and Haitian gods spirits do. It says there were three primary religious practices: religious worship and obeisance to the Zemi themselves. Which, when you look into this, you know, the Zemi, they were idols. You know, they would fashion them out of stone, and you know, they would pretty much bow down to them and throw sacrifices, you know, to them. So just adding to that point, how, you know, Ephraim was very heavy into the idol worship, right? And for this reason is why the Most High sent, you know, the Spaniards, you know, Esau after them, which is all written, you know, in the scriptures, Deuteronomy 28, where it says a nation whose language, you know, you can't understand, you know, swift as the eagle flieth, you know. So this happened, you know, and this is all tied into the scriptures, man. So as the scripture says, you know, the Spirit beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. You know, the signs are there, the history is there, right? When you look at our people, you know, the spirit, you know, that's in our people is there, man. So all the signs point to these people being the Ephraimites of the Bible. But it says, you know, it goes into various things that they did. You know, they had the dancing in the village court during special festivals of Thanksgiving or petition, medicine men or priests consulting the Zemi for advice and healing. This was done in public ceremonies with song and dance. You know, so they pretty much would take certain practices, you know, that they had, that they maintained, but then they would tie it in with idol worship. Let me see. I also wanted to get this too, because you know, we touched on the name, you know, Taino, Tawab Aim. Did we touch on Boricua?
Yeah, could you go to Deuteronomy 33 and 13, and then get the one you're talking about.
Deuteronomy 33 and 19.
13.
Oh, 13, so like it. It says, and of Joseph he said, blessed of the Lord be his land, and for the precious things of heaven, for the dew and for the deep that couches beneath.
Right. And Ephraim being, you know, the head of the house of Joseph, you know, but specifically, you know, this goes into to Ephraim, but it says, and of Joseph he said, blessed of the Lord be his land, you know, because when you go into what Boricua means, you know, it goes into you know, land of the valiant Lord. You know, when we actually click on it right here, it says Ma Barakat. Oh, you good. It's just right here.
Okay.
just reading it from right to left, it says Ma Barakat Yahweh, so blessed of the Lord. Then it would say Aratazah at the end, below the Lord's name. So Ma Barakat Yahweh Aratazah, so blessed of the Lord is his land, So when you actually look at that land, or you got things like bioluminescent bays, rivers, rainforests, waterfalls, all right, and being that was like it was really, really good land, So Esau ultimately understood that, so he essentially used that to his benefit during that time of the Great Migration.
Mm-hmm. I just
Yeah,
pulled this up real quick. Oh, Slovakia.
I was gonna say that also goes into the exotic fruits and animals that was over in that land as well.
Mm-hmm. But I got this word. Oh, well, I got this from the site. It says, where does the term Boricua come from? It says the word comes from Borican, an Aboriginal, because, Ephraim likes to call themselves Boricua,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it says the word comes from Borican, an Aboriginal name originally given to the island of Puerto Rico that meant something like the great land of the brave and noble Lord or valiant Lord, you know. So just adding to that point that the brother mentioned. So, Jake had the Hebrew, you know, even this right here. Pull this up real quick. Um, they call it the Nazario collection, right? So it says the Nazario collection, also known as the Aguebana's library, Father Nazario rocks and the Phoenician rocks, right? Because what they found was caves and rocks filled with glyphs and Hebrew writing on it, or what they call Phoenician writing, which is really Hebrew. But it says are a cache of carved stones that originated at Guayanilla, Puerto Rico. According to contemporary accounts, the statuettes made of local serpentine rocks were first discovered by Catholic priest Jose Maria Nazario y Cancel during the 19th century and featured unidentified petroglyphs. Oh, well, it doesn't show it. But petroglyphs that have been speculated to be connected to the old world for over 130 years. The original site was not far from the Uwaco and was underground, and it was hidden under a slate that concealed a tunnel. Overwhelmed with the quantity and difficulty of transporting a trove that totaled more than a ton, he opted to abandon his individual approach and recruited locals to aid in the moving of the rocks to his house. So it goes into, I think it's going to continue more. It says, where he conducted the first research on them by comparing them to similar objects from other countries. Nazario would combine his research with his religious background, leading to the hypothesis that there might be some connection between them and the 10 lost tribes.
Mm.
You see, so, and here are some of the images, Salakia. Here are some of the images of those rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they have the Hebrew writing or Phoenician writing, which is Hebrew, but they call it Phoenician, just to steer you away from the truth.
Give you some ambiguity.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's a little bit more on that Deuteronomy when you get a chance.
Khan. Let me go back. Deuteronomy 33 and verse 14, it says, and for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, and for the precious things put forth by the moon, and for the chief things of the ancient mountains, and for the precious things of the lasting hills, and for the precious things of the earth and fullness thereof, and for the good will of him that dwelt in the bush, let the blessing come upon the head of Joseph and upon the top of the head of him that was separated from his brethren.
Yeah, 17 finishes it out.
Khan, his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh.
All right, so this notably goes into Ephraim, and then also it goes into to Manasseh, which we're not going to touch on today. But when you look at both lands, all right, that's why I said, and it didn't give the actual definition to it, but Cuba, has good land too. But when you go into the
Mhm.
land of Ephraim, that's why it's called Puerto Rico. How you say it in Spanish, bro?
Puerto Rico.
Right, rich port.
Hmm.
It's very rich in the fertile land, and the bioluminescent things that the Lord essentially placed there.
Hmm. Hey, well, even that you mentioned Manasseh. Just real quick, that word from Manasseh. I mean, for Cuba, uh, Cuba means where fertile land is abundance.
Hmm.
So just adding to your point, like you mentioned, that goes for both Puerto Rico or for Ephraim and Manasseh. The Cubans and the Puerto Ricans. Both their lands are very fertile.
Hmm.
Let me go back. So was that it for that one?
Yeah, that was it.
Con. Um, also wanted to read a little bit more into this. It goes into the more into that the genocide, right? So this is a genocide. It says there is a great debate as to just how many Arawak Taino inhabited Hispaniola when Columbus landed in 1492. Some of the early Spanish historian observers claim there were as many as 3 million to 4 million. These numbers seem to be based on very little reliable evidence and are thought to be gross exaggerations. However, since nothing like a census was done, the methods for estimating the numbers were extremely shaky, whether by these early historians or later critics. Um, Let me see, because it goes into not the numbers. But anyway, let me continue reading. It says one long technical article on the population comes in with the low estimate of 1,000 or 100,000. Several other modern scholars seem to lean more forcefully in the area of 300,000 to 400,000. Whatever the number, what happened to them is extremely tragic. They were not immune to European diseases, especially smallpox, and the Spanish worked them unmercifully in the mines and fields. By 1507, the Spanish were settled and able to do a more reliable job of counting the Arawak Taino. It is generally agreed that by 1507, their numbers shrunk to 60,000. By 1531, the numbers was down to 600. Today, there are no easily discernible or discerned traces of the Arawak Taino at all, except for some of the archaeological remains that have been found, not only on Hispaniola, but also across the Windward Passage in Cuba. Complete genocide was practiced on these natives.
Hmm.
Right. So he was adding to that, how pretty much Jake was reduced down to a small number, right? But like we mentioned in Genesis 49, uh, how pretty much the Lord was with them,
Yeah.
so the Lord was able to preserve a certain amount of them to where you see, Ephraim explode now to a large, vast number that really can't even be numbered, because Jake has mixed the seed with other heathen, and is all over America as to where you can't really, narrow him down.
Right. 'Cause he couldn't kill all of them, and that's the thing. He'll try to say like they're no longer here. They're just being called a different name now.
Hmm. Being been uh, indoctrinated, with the American way, learn the Spanish language, and now Jake is, all into, being called a Puerto Rican,
That's right.
and here it is, you know, uh, what I mentioned earlier, how Jake tried to, make pacts with the heathen, which he did, he made pact with the United States, but uh, here it is, all these things happen to your people, but you forgot all that
Hmm.
and decided to, make the deal with these heathen. This is the reason why the brother brought out, you know, what was that? Ecclesiasticus 12 and 10.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So, you know, this all adds to the point how our people are destroyed as a nation, man, to where they just, continually do things, that's of their detriment. Here it is, the Most High warned us of these things. I mean, even though we did fall off, but uh, Jake should have known better, man. Jake should have known better than to make deals with their enemies.
Yep. I got a precept for you, matter of fact.
Hmm.
Um, Lamentations chapter 4 and verse. I started verse 16. It says the anger of the Lord has divided them. He will no more regard them. They respected not the persons of the priest. They favored not the elders. The point. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. And that's the problem with Ephraim, man, is they trust Esau, Edom, and look at him as a savior when that devil is really he's just trying to destroy you, man. Everything that we
Mhm.
talked about in this lesson, the history and what he's even doing now, is all showing us that this man can't save you. All right, you are in this position mainly because of your idolatry and your refusal to return back to Yahweh Shem Yahweh because hey man, white Jesus and Mary and whatever other Christian or Catholic roots that our people have been raised up in, you have been misguided. The reason why you were being judged like that, that's why Puerto Rico, is being bludgeoned by different plagues, blackouts, famines, whatnot, earthquakes, all
Mhm.
that stuff, is due to your idolatry, man, and your refusal to turn back to the Lord.
That's right. That's right. Hey, but that's pretty much all I had, though. I don't know if brothers had anything else.
Real quick, that
Hmm.
article I sent you with the young lords, can you pull that up? Just to show
Oh,
you that that's that connection of northern and southern kingdom. Esau has been trying to hide that, but we've always had the ties with each other because when you go into the as we're talking about with the struggle in America, they have the same curses on them that the northern or the southern kingdom has. When you have the Black Panthers came out, the northern kingdom had their own group too, which was called the Young Lords, and they were inspired by Judah.
What's the one you always bring out, Yeshaya? You said the brown the maroon something with the hats or something.
um, you talking about the brown? You have
Brown berets.
the
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, the brown berets. Yeah, yeah. It's like I'm trying to remember the name, but
Yeah,
I got it pulled up right here. Hold on. There we go.
the order. And we could just like go into it a little bit, ain't nothing too major. Um,
Hmm.
you can read that first paragraph.
Khan. It says the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party, and it says the Young Lords was one of the main militant civil rights groups in Chicago in the 1960s and 1970s that were inspired by the Black Panther Party. Although
Hmm.
white people often remembered the Black Panther Party as a threatening organization because of the group's leaders, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale advocated for open carry guns and self defense against violent police. Many Black people recall the community programming and services the Black Panther Party provided in cities all around the country. One of the ways the Black Panther Party created what they called community survival programs was by occupying abandoned or uh, dilapidated buildings in poor areas and remodeling the structures into childcare or resource distribution centers. In Chicago, specifically, Black Panthers ran free breakfast programs out of such buildings for African American children before school.
And
So it
keep going.
says, using the model of the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, a Puerto Rican civil rights and community organization founded in September 1968, prioritized change in their local communities through serve the people programs. For example, the Young Lords wanted to create places in the community that supported poor and working class families. One of these places was the Armitage Avenue United Methodist Church at 834 Armitage Avenue, where the Young Lords organized a sit in and permanently occupied the space.
You can
Though,
jump down to the next paragraph.
Con, skipping down, it says multiple times the Young Lords and the Black Panther Party united to act against injustices that affected both Black and Puerto Rican communities. The police harassed both groups during their protests. For example, during the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, the police arrested 8 key members of protest organizations, including Black Panther Party co founder Bobby Seale for inciting a riot after a multiracial march in protest unequal housing opportunities.
Uh-huh.
The Black Panther Party and the Young Lords also protested police brutality against black and brown men like Manuel Ramos and a young lord killed by a police officer in May 1969, and Fred Hampton, who was assassinated during a police raid on his home in December 1969. Damn, so both tribes were getting it from Esau in this year.
Yeah, and that's just showing you why they put so much emphasis on trying to keep us divided. I trying to put that narrative that so-called black and brown people aren't the same, but they understood that if we came together, which only way that we're going to come together as a nation is through the spirit of the Lord, which is why you're seeing Northern and Southern Kingdom, coming together, going out on the highways, and we teaching, together because we are one nation. But Esau feared that union, so
Mm-hmm.
that's why they will always, push the narrative that we're at each other's throats. Like when you watch movies, like I remember in Minister Society, they showed you that the cops would beat the niggas up and then go drop them off in the Latin neighborhoods, thinking that they was gonna kill each other, and we was helping each other, man. There's
Mm-hmm.
always been that camaraderie amongst the tribes.
That's right. Because at this time you had, like it says right here, Black Panthers, you had the Young Lords, you had the Brown Berets, and then you also had AIM, which is a American Indigenous movement,
Mm,
which was pretty much GAD.
okay, I never
So
heard
you had
that.
all the tribes, having their own, civil rights activist groups.
Yeah,
Um,
let's show you that we all oppressed by the same devil.
mhm. Yeah. They were all speaking against the man. But it says, in both instances, Ramos and Hampton were unarmed targets of police violence. The Young Lords and the Black Panther Party expressed their discontent with repression of protest and police brutality during a large protest march on April 12, 1970. The groups marched around the federal building and the Daly Center with signs and opposed the violence of the Chicago Police Department and encouraged togetherness. The unity of these two groups in Chicago was powerful and showed the prevalence of oppression and police harassment in both the African American and Puerto Rican communities.
And that right there put fear in Esau, which is why, like I said, they don't want us to know that we're the same people,
Mm-hmm.
because that fear deep down is when they see black and brown together, they know that, hey, that's the tribes, man. That's
Mm-hmm.
why we read earlier in Jeremiah the 50, was it 50 and 22?
33.
33, how Judah and Ephraim is oppressed together. But now we're at a point to where the Lord is get Amos 9:11,
Mm-hmm.
and then get that other scripture where it said that Judah shall not vex Ephraim.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Amos.
The Lord is bringing us back together.
This is Amos chapter 9 and verse 11. And it says, "In that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof, and I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old."
Right. And in the days of old, there was no northern and southern kingdom. It was the house of Israel. All right. So David's mighty man, was comprised of both northern and southern kingdom. So we're getting brought back to the ancient kingdom that we once had as being one nation. All right. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what the devils fear, man. They don't want us to come back together. That's why, when they see a northern kingdom brother and a Judite brother, in the same, vicinity, they start, them hairs start going up on their neck. And it's like, what they doing? You know,
Mm-hmm.
they try to, let's say the Spanish and the English, they try to put all those barriers. The Lord is breaking all that down, man. That's why, like I was going into yesterday, you'll have, Judah, go amongst, the northern kingdom, spots like at the rodeos or different clubs and all that, and he fit right in,
Mm-hmm.
because that's that spirit. We're all the same people, like we read earlier, Romans 8 and 16, man.
Mm-hmm. Gone. I got the other one if you want it.
Yeah, we get that one too.
This is Isaiah 11 and verse 12, it says, and he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim.
Right. And those the curses that's coming off our people. Because hey, when you out on the highways and you see that 12 tribe sign and you see northern and southern kingdom, because you'll have, I know brothers was testifying about that, early on in the faith, when northern kingdom started to come up and listen, a lot of them would get flack from their brothers. It's like, yo, why are you want to intermingle with the niggas, man? They looked at them like they was beneath them or something. But the Lord now has it to where it's nothing for us to be together because we're the same people, man. We have the same enemy, we suffer the same curses, we want the same thing, which is freedom from this oppression that Esau has put upon us, man.
That's right. What was that precept where it talks about the partition?
Say Ephesians.
Oh yeah. I want to get this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ephesians 2 and 13. It says, but now in Hamashiach Yahushua, ye who sometimes were far off are made nigh by the blood of Hamashiach. Right. So because of Yahushua's sacrifice, we are being adopted back as sons, being brought close to the Lord again. But it says, verse 14, for he is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the middle wall partition between us. Right. So through the Lord's sacrifice, this is why, the tabernacles of David are being reestablished, right. where all the tribes are being united back as one. But again, this is all happening through this word, right? This is how the tribes are coming back together, because in Ezekiel 37, it goes into the bone joining bone, and flesh, but the breath was not in them, that whole bone and bone against bone and the flesh coming on them, that happened back then during the whole civil rights activist time, right?
Right.
But now that the word is out, now that joining together, is even more solidified with the breath.
Mm-hmm. Because I can add to that, because it'd be instances where it's just natural they link up, like when after Rodney King got his ass beat and they was rioting, hey man, the tribes came together, man. They was both fucking up Esau during that time. So it's like, so now it's a spiritual union that has brought us back together. And this what Yahushua did with breaking that wall of partition. Now we see that we're the same people, and that's why, like you said, you see, the Northern Kingdom brothers coming together with the Southern Kingdom brothers, and we're preaching this gospel because this is all for us as a nation. So-called Negro, Latino, Native Americans, we're all the same people.
That's right. Hey, but just the fact that the camps are out here, and you have all the tribes, in these camps, that just further validates what we're saying to be true.
That's right.
Like the whole 12 tribes chart, the breakdown of it, the correlation is there. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we're just, making this up and reaching, you know what I'm saying? We actually like this actually makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it ain't these people, then who else could it be?
Exactly. But yeah, that's all I had.
Con. Yeah, that was all I had too.
Con. Well, I don't want to Zaza by night Paulos, where there was a beautiful edification to the spirit. Well, I don't want to Zaza Tham Yashka Wam to Wild Lord as well. You have a good day. Well, we can go ahead and close it up by saying Call Halai Mla, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Chachwadash. While double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone that taught us truth and rule well. And much respect to you, bros, out there pushing this truth with our righteousness and sincerity. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.